Yeah. So, Catharine Cary, uh, independent artist and researcher, vagabond nomad, born in the United States, now a French citizen and an American citizen, but that's just really for convenience sake. I think that I'll just start talking about the upside down protocol, and then maybe we can talk about other things that I've done in my life. The upside down protocol was born when I was there was an incredible hailstorm in this little village that I lived in the middle of Provence in France, and it's perched. A friend of mine calls it a micro village perched on a big rock, and there's a wall that holds the village up, which has a 20-meter drop. And after this rainstorm, when we've been taking pictures and improvising with the cars and the hail and the rain, the sun came out just like it just did here in Lisbon. And we were all sitting at the edge of this parapet. And for some reason, Marie said to me, "Do you want me to hold you upside down over the parapet?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I don't even know how I did this or how I even got there. But she held me upside down. She was holding my knees, and I could see the entire countryside and the Mont Ventoux upside down. And it was the first time in my life that I felt like I was in the right place, that the world looked like I thought it should look like. And so from that, I started thinking about, what does that mean? I mean, is it just, I noticed that in Paris, I would always when you took a map of Paris, in order to read it, I always had to turn it upside down. So I started to think about, what does it mean? And the name Upside Down Protocol just came to me, so I didn't really and when I actually applied, the first application I made to get to her PhD, I told them I wanted to write about an upside down protocol, and what came back to me was, "You can't call it a protocol, you haven't written it yet." And I was like, isn't that interesting? So that was also like, we'll turn it upside down, because I could named the something before I even knew what it was. And it's been a slow burn process for me, but it really is making yourself, your body and your mind and everything you do, as agile and supple and ready, supple and subtle, to look at something in a different way. And upside down is this, but upside down can also be this. Mirror can be like this. And the idea is really taking everything that you do and just saying, okay, this is the way I've already done it. This is the way, that one old example of this was, every morning you put your pants on in a certain way. You always take the right side first. So you just say, okay, let's take the left side first. And then you fall over in your bed because you've never done that before. And they're really silly stuff. But, and one of my perfect examples of my own life, which just drives me crazy, but I realize this is the way I've always been, even before she hung me over the parapet, is I was living in a little town in Texas, and I woke up and I said, I want to go to that Mexican restaurant. They make delicious scrambled eggs with fresh cilantro. That's what I want. I got dressed. I didn't hesitate. I got in a car. I drove to the restaurant. I walk in, and this charming guy hands me this menu with 100 things in it. And instead of getting what I came for, I looked at it. I said, well, I've got to try something I've never had before. And for me, that's part of the upside down protocol. There's also a part of it which is kind of instead of letting go, I call it letting be. Kind of, I really want this, but, I don't know how to get there, and I'm just going to keep doing different things than I would normally do. I'm not going to do the typical political thing that I would do, call the right person, have the right lunch. And in fact, my body told me that I couldn't do it anymore. I was at a moment, I was creating a gallery in Paris. We were having cocktail parties every night. We were selling my art. We were selling other people's art. It was this whirlwind. We'd go from there. We'd have 3 or 4 drinks there, and then we'd go off to every cocktail party. And it was kind of the ultimate, if not the ultimate kind of mondanité. I don't even know how you say that in English, where you're just kind of out there. You're wearing the right clothes. And I was like, wow, this is it. I've figured it out, the system. And I started having epileptic fits. But I wasn't epileptic, and no doctor could find anything physically wrong with me. But I took that as when they said, basically, you have to take this medicine, and with this medicine you can't take baths, you can't drive, you're basically being dampened down. And as an artist, who wants to be dampened down? And I just said, I'm not going to do that. And I sat with a neurolog, and I said, okay, I'm going to have to change the way I live my life. And so I chose to do something different, which is in part is, slow down a millisecond, I say it, which but also just keep thinking about different ways to get something done. And what is that something to be done? Well, for me, it's probably in the end helping others. And you have to be healthy enough to help the others. And the only way I found to be healthy is to be in constant movement and not settle into what I call the 2.2 world. And the reason I call that is because when I was about 14 or 15, there was a statistic that came out of the United States that said everybody has an average of 2.2 children. So it's like I saw myself, because I'm old enough to have been in a high school where they had the boys building things and we were learning how to cook. And so there's home economics and industrial arts, and so we were programmed to a different kind of lifestyle than the one I'm living now, and it just whenever I look at what I'm doing or think about it, I realize that I'm trying to take the paradigm, if you will, and change it. And that's why it became the upside down protocol. So this is just a little example that I love to do. I also have these wonderful, I found it in an Italian market, the little balls, crystal balls that are at the bottom of chandeliers. Mm-hmm. And if you hold them up and look through them, the whole world is upside down. But this is the home version you can do with it. So you look through a glass, you look through a normal glass, and you can see me and I look the way I am, and I can see you and you look the way you are, right? But when you add water to this glass, I see Eric upside down, I see the camera upside down, I see Raphael upside down, and you see me upside down. And for me, that's just the reminder of we think we know what we're doing, but we most of the time don't. And I'm not sure how it, I think, I've done some workshops. I've often thought of trying to commercialize this upside down protocol, and every time I do that, I feel like I'm heading back into the 2.2 world, so I don't. For me, it's really a way of, it's become a method for me, and then people who start to understand it. And what happens is when I talk about it, suddenly somebody will call me. Like this guy who was trying for a job, and he called me, and it was a big job, and he got it, and he was congratulated by all the famous people all over the world, literally. And he said, the only person I wanted to talk to was you. I wanted to let you know that I got the job, and the way I did it is because the only way it happened is in an upside down way. So what I like about the upside down protocol for me is it's just allowing, in a way. It's allowing for something larger, allowing for something bigger, and back to the story, allowing for things to exist, which I think is what the sphere is all about, allowing for things to exist that we've never thought of before. And the world, I really believe that the world is, the system that we live in is something that is created and now is bigger than we are. When I was a kid, they were always saying that we were going to have robots take us over. And so I had an image of this little robot, or big robot, since I'm pretty tall, that was just going to replace me. That was the image I had as I was a kid. And then I realized, but actually that's not what's happened. What's happened is we've invested so much effort into a system, and I don't blame anybody. It's all of us, the system, and the system is what's taken us over. It's not, and the system and its values and what we decided in the system that says we should stay in one place, or the system that we should make only money, or the system is only based on economics, or whatever the system inculcates in us, is so strong. And I sometimes read what we call I think they call it beach literature. There was a bar when I was in London, there was a pub down the corner, and they'd filled all of their bookshelves with these books, what my sister calls bodice rippers. They're always the stories, the romantic story of the woman meets the man and the family happens, and whatever, this kind of thing. And I'd be like, why do I want to read this stuff? And I'm like, why? This is embarrassing. I'm doing a PhD on improvisation. Why am I reading this shit? And I realized that I do it to remind me of the message, and all the different ways that the message is given to us is how you should conform, and how you should be, and what you should do, and whether it's heteronormative, heterosexual, whatever. I'm not even putting any one thing on it. There are so many norms that we have to find a way to get out of that system and break that system. And we break it from the inside, we break it by creating something else. And that's, for me, is why I think the sphere fits me, fits my imagination so well. It's because I think that's what we're trying to do. Wow. When I did my degree in international economics and diplomacy, and before I became an artist, or had the, as you said, the rabbit ears of an artist, I used to run big, complicated urban development projects in New York, in addition to many other things I did in my life. But one dinner party, because I had a budget for going to cool dinner parties, and in one dinner party I was sitting at James Carville's table, and James Carville was the person that ran so successfully Bill Clinton's presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. And we were talking and yakking and doing whatever you do at dinner parties. At the end of it, he hands me his card or his phone number or whatever, and he goes, "Call me. I'll run whatever campaign you want to, whatever you want to run for, I'll run the campaign." And it was like, wow. And I've had many instances in my life where that, the 2.2 path, was just presented itself for me. And I regularly chose to go a different way. And it wasn't easy, it was pretty painful. But I think that, because part of me says, wow, if I was president of the United States, or I was senator, or if I was one of these great positions within the current system, I could make a bigger impact. I could change the world. And I actually come to the point of realizing that I think we change the world in our own very specific way, and we do things. And it's not a goal of mine to change the world per se, but I need to feel that the world that I'm in at that moment is something that supports this idea of abundance, and supports this idea of generosity, and supports this idea of humor and laughter and and connection. And I'm just constantly doing that whenever I can. One of my favorite things to do is go into a place that doesn't expect me to dance, like a pharmacy in France, or I went to the post office once. There were two women. I don't know why this post office was so huge, but it was, and their desk was like over there, and in my hand I had 3 things to mail, and the women were just staying there. One was, they were just standing there. One was older, one was younger, and they were kind of waiting, hoping somebody would come do something at the post office. And I looked at this space, and of course I didn't do a whole thing, but I just did a like this, and I handed them my letters. Both of them did the same movement. They mirrored me immediately. And of course we were smiling and we were laughing, and it was just great. And same thing in a pharmacy. I walked into the pharmacy, very stiff guy behind the thing, all kinds of advertisement to buy this, that, or the other thing. And he goes, I just go, "Can I have some aspirin?" He goes, "Of course." And I think that those little details of gifting, for me, those are gifts, because you're giving a little bit of yourself. So I've been thinking a lot about abundance. I've been thinking about, I think when you're privileged, which I certainly am, there are very strict ways. When I had money for, when I was running big projects in New York, the last project I ran was for Disney. I had budgets, to help all of the not-for-profits that I've been working with or for before I got this job. And it was really interesting to be in that position. But what was odd is that I realized that in America, for example, you can give money to help the poor in some country, but you're supposed to get all the benefit of this kind of giving away, but you're keeping it really at a distance. You're not in touch with these people who don't have anything. You're just kind of giving a check or going to a dinner party with your outfit with other people, and it's very far away, the people that it's affecting. So I found, and I think abundance just takes a lot of different forms. And one of the things was this apartment that Eric and I curated in Montreal called the Speculative Apartment. And the idea was really, it was based on this is how we met, but it was based on it was based on the fact that he had an incredible library of the speculative realism and speculative fiction, and the idea that we wanted people to come use the library but not leave the place with the books, because we didn't want the library to disintegrate. So how could we have people come use it, and what would they be doing there? Be reading, but could they have things to take away? And he had lots of jade plants that made babies, and he had lots of other kinds of plants that made babies. So we were going to have, you could go away with a book, and I created all these bookmarks that were double. So you could go away with the bookmark, and the double of that bookmark was left in the book that you'd been reading. So you came back with your bookmark and you found the book that had because I'd made a lot of similar bookmarks, and there was all kinds of ways that we were looking at how you could pay for something but pay a little bit more or pay a little less. They have this thing in France where you go to a cafe and you pay a coffee forward, so that if somebody comes in, they don't have the money for a coffee. They're doing it with baguettes now, and just kind of as much as possible giving away or creating systems of accepting that we are that the system that we live in is based on scarcity. We don't think we ever have enough, whether it's money or love or clothes or apartments or dogs or cats or flights or whatever. And in fact, we have so much. And the more we give away, the more we have to give away. It's very strange. But I live in a community, a tiers-lieu at the moment, which was also a gift in and of itself. But one of the things I love is that people leave gifts anonymously in front of my apartment all the time. Now, I probably do the same thing, but I hadn't done it yet. I mean, I hadn't really, and all of a sudden there'll be like a shoe rack that I needed, or a rug, or, that we thought you might like this, or we found this beautiful thing. And there's also a lot of things I've done where you kind of start an art installation somewhere, and somebody just adds to it, and then you add to it, and then you add to it. It's not, which takes away from authorship, it's like, and you don't know who's doing it, you don't know who's adding it. So, yeah, I think that
in the sphere, we are trying to create the possibility for audience to get invested in the works, in the artworks, and it's all in the spirit of speculative generosity, and also of creating a mechanism for generative art to happen. And I was wondering if you would like to tell us a little bit, what would you say to people who don't know exactly how to invest, but somehow might feel the desire to invest themselves into the world, into other people's work? Because I find that you do it so wonderfully.
Well, first of all, I'll tell the story of how I ended up investing, becoming a major shareholder in the sphere. I think that even with all of my shaking up my way of doing things, sometimes I say the reason I improvise is because I actually can't improvise. I sometimes think we choose to do the things that we most need. So I find that really interesting. People think I'm a great improviser, but is it because I'm so stuck in the 2.2 system that I actually have to improvise to get out of my own way? I have no idea. But when I saw the I don't remember the words, but when it came out that we could, the karmic funding cycle, and I saw there was a moment that I was getting to the end of it, and the money wasn't going up enough. And I was sitting here saying, wow, this has given me so much, just the conversations that I've been involved in, the discussions that we've had, the participation, the anarchive things on just any of it, the weird economies, just conversations with any of you. And I thought, this is so worth it. It'd be really, I don't know what's stopping people, but probably what's stopping me is I have no idea what Ethereum is. I don't know how to do a wallet. What's a MetaMask? I was like, so I basically called Eric, and he immediately called Pedro. I said, listen, I am going to invest money. I'm going to invest more money than I have, actually. I'm going to invest, but I need you to hold my hand. And I need you to take me through the system, because otherwise I won't do it. I just won't do it because it's just too hard. It felt too hard. And it wasn't for you, it may have been hard, but for me it was hard. So, and that's what they did. They took care of me. They helped me. It was I don't know how painstaking it was for them, but for me it was like, okay, this is what I need to do, and this is what I need to do. And, they reacted, and they were available, and went through the system. And the funny part was that when it was actually Crypto.com gave me, enough money to move it into the mask and then move it into the sphere, was exactly when a friend and I were going to the beach for 2 days. And so I had all this stuff on my phone, and I had to do whatever it was, and get, you know, a Google authenticator and do it in 5 minutes and all this kind of stuff. And we're driving around looking for internet, literally driving to the beach. And we're like, okay, we have to get this done today because it's like stopping on Saturday. So we're doing this, and we're like, okay, stop here. The internet's working. You know, Google authentication, do this kind of thing. Da. Well, we weren't looking at the news, and this is the day that the market just went fashlunk. So I ended up with all this ETH because for my minimum investment, I basically bought, you know, as many ETH as I wanted to invest. So I ended up being like a major shareholder in whatever, you know, seed fund number 4. And that was really fun. And talk about abundance. I mean, okay, let's get a little spiritual here, you know. The world took care of me and took care of the sphere on that day, you know, and my father's freaking out. He's like, how can you invest and it's dying? I was like, well, too late. I already did it. So, you know, I think my advice to anybody, that we talk a lot about fear, and sometimes people say it's fear of, you know, the ultimate fear is the fear of death. You're not going to do something because you're fear of dying, and dying can be described as, you know, losing something of yourself as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be falling over dead, but you know, we don't do something because there's an ultimate fear, and sometimes we can't do that fear, and sometimes that fear is so paralyzing that we can't move, and that's okay, you know, and we kind of just have to accommodate that. But I think that when you have a soupçon, you know, a little bit of fear, you're like, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this. Well, you know, it's kind of like, you know, just, you know, kind of enrobe yourself, kind of say, okay, this scares the shit out of me, you know. I have this, actually, I have on my computer, it's really funny, I don't have a screensaver. I have a screensaver that kicks in after like 4 hours. So every once in a while I come home, I've left my computer open, and there's a little apple, and it says, I love you, which I must have done years ago. But I think it's a little bit of this kind of, it's just not that dangerous. You know, life is just not that dangerous. I think that's also part of the system. You know, you're not going to have enough. You need to save your money for the future. Whatever it is, you know, you take care of your own. I don't know. There's all these things. And for me, they're just all messages that the system has generated through its own algorithms and its AI and whatever we've done. And it's all these messages coming in. You don't have enough. And I just upside down it and say, well, you know what? I'm alive right this minute. And I can, you know, I have this. You know, so I can give it away, you know, and I bet you I'll get another one. And if I don't, then I wasn't supposed to have it. I mean, it's a real, you know, and the other thing was, I was at a dinner party once with some friends, and they were telling stories of these 2 friends of theirs. In this dinner party, the 2 people that were having me to dinner were very much in the system. One was a professor, the other was, I think they were both, anyway, they were both intellectuals. They were rising up through the ranks of intellectualism, and they were becoming professors, and they were recognized. They were writing books. They were doing it right. But the only stories they told at the dinner parties were about their 2 friends that kept fucking up. You know, that were kept, you know, kind of like going to buy milk and meeting a guy and taking a boat with him to Nepal. You know, I mean, they were just, all the stories were, they couldn't come home because they ran out of gas, so they met somebody and they went to a farm. You know, it was just these stories of, I can't remember her name, but Betsy or something like that. And all they talked about at the dinner parties was Betsy. And I thought there, I go, there's no reason to stay in the norm. You know, if I sit here and just, you know, have my 2.2 children and only do my job and eat, you know, the 3 meals a day, nobody's going to tell any stories about me. I want people to tell stories about me. So I think there's that too. It's like, you know, and when you tell stories, look, talk about generative stuff. You know, something happens to you, you tell me, that makes me happy. I tell Eric, he tells, you know, the minute there's a good story, you tell it, and, you know, and that's art, you know. So for me, that's also how I've broken through when I get stuck and don't dare do something. You know, I also, sometimes it's not the time to do it. You know, sometimes I can't break through. I can't upside down myself. But when I can, boy, you know, it's like an open flow, and I'm just like, let's go. So I think that's really, it's a lot of care, you know, it's a lot of taking care. And we need to take care of ourselves. My sister said to me the other day, she goes, I can't, she goes, I don't know why it's so hard to take care of myself. And I said to her, well, think about it, you take care of yourself so you can take care of others. That's why you do it, you know, and that's you know, You know, even if you buy the shit that you're not big enough, you're not thin enough, you know, whatever your generation of, you know, not good enough is, just say you are. You know, you can wallow, you know, you can wallow, and it's okay to wallow in your pain sometimes. But Erin Manning actually said something I thought was really wonderful. She said, what happens is when you start to wallow, you kind of go into your, I'm not good enough, I'm not this enough, whatever, and you kind of back yourself into a corner, and you tend to not be with others at that moment. Then you start thinking about all that's wrong with the world, and you're all alone because you've chosen now to be all alone, and you can't do anything because you've excluded yourself from the world in your own pain cycle, and so you can't take care of all those things that need to be taken care of.